You got to start thinking about these things and think how these people and the system itself, what the incentives are to think of potential probabilities so you can make sure that you're not one of those victims. You can either be prepared or be a victim. It's your choice. If they start to ban cash, if you look at the Banking for All Act, that's basically where we have accounts with the Federal Reserve. If we, the people, all have accounts with the Fed, then there's really no need for the banking system. There is no banking system. There is only one central bank. That's it. And so if the Fed has a balance sheet where basically they can take an infinite haircut, what that means, if the Fed loans you money and you don't pay it back, it doesn't matter. They don't have a profit and loss. So they can start to distribute money, not to whomever they want, but how they want. So instead of giving you a mortgage based on your credit score or your ability to repay the loan, they can do it based on your social score.
Did you wear a mask today? Do you have a vaccine shot?
Exactly.
Did you cross the street?
That's right.
Did you bow?
There is some disturbing news from China.
China's growing network of surveillance cameras makes all of this possible. China's version factors in everything from jaywalking to smoking on trains to buying too many video games.
Some people with low scores already being punished, rather, if they want to travel. Nearly 11 million Chinese people can no longer fly, and 4 million are barred from trains.
There's massive money printing because the U.S. government is in serious financial trouble.
Market participants expecting trillions more in stimulus from both the central bank and Congress.
At the same time, governments have enacted record amounts of fiscal stimulus to boost economies stalled by the pandemic.
When the debt to GDP ratio hits 90%, it's aloha. You've gone too far. November 2020, it's 130% debt to GDP. And they expect it to go to 250% debt to GDP. What that means is the U.S. government has to print more fake money.
When governments or central banks print money, it doesn't go to everyone in the population equally. It goes to the insiders, the political insiders.
So who would be the political insiders today?
Clintons. The Clintons, it would be the individuals at the World Economic Forum. So if you watch any of their videos, they've got this whole big push for a great reset, where they're calling COVID a quote-unquote opportunity. Those are their words, not mine.
Now is the historical moment, the time to shape the system. We need a great reset.
The great opportunity for reset.
These are the insiders that are buddy-buddy with the people, the central bankers, who are printing the money. They're closest to it. So they get it, and it hasn't got out into the economy to create inflation in either consumer prices or assets. So their purchasing power, they get the maximum benefit from this money printing, where by the time it gets down to the average Joe, if it ever does, prices have gone up so much that their purchasing power is less than it was before they printed the money in the first place. So in my opinion, and I'm not saying that the quote-unquote insiders that we talked about, that group of people, are actually doing this, but if you think about their incentive structure, they would be incentivized for the economy to do poorly and for the economy to actually collapse. They would be incentivized to promote things such as negative interest rates. Because what that does is that destroys the banking system or the economy. The more the economy is destroyed, the more money printing the central banks will do. Therefore, the richer the insiders get.
Which explains why the stock market keeps going up, 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 even though people have lost jobs, businesses have shut down, the economy is in the toilet, but the stock market still does great.
Yeah, Kim, I had a great chart the other day in one of my videos where I showed the Buffett indicator. If you guys don't know, that's the market cap of the stock market compared to GDP, right? And the only time that GDP has ticked down was back in 2008, the GFC in this chart I had. And it went down just slightly, but of course the stock market went down by 50%. Now, it's the only time that I've ever seen in history where GDP has collapsed, but the stock market has skyrocketed.
Right.
It's gone the complete opposite direction. So there is no relationship whatsoever between the stock market and the real economy right now.
Quick question, why did Buffett sell his bank shares?
And if he knows the global elites are trying to destroy the banking system, by pushing negative interest rates, obviously Buffett wants nothing to do with that.
Removing cash from an economy and putting everybody under surveillance doesn't mean the criminals can't use money anymore. Of course they can. They will continue to do that. They will always have means of doing it. It just means that everybody else is under surveillance. So you end up surveilling the innocent. What does that give you? That gives you political control. This is a very dangerous road we're going down.
Let's think about this. We all have a bank account, we'll just say B of A, Wells Fargo, whatever, and you get your bank statements every single month, and then you reconcile that with QuickBooks or whatever. So now if we had a bank account with the Fed, then the Federal Reserve or the government would see every single one of your transactions, especially if there was no cash whatsoever, right? So then every transaction had to go through the Fed or the government. So the amount of power that this would give them is basically unlimited.
That's really totalitarian communism and all that.
I think it's even worse.
What you have here is you have grunge, you have the government, you have banks, you have Wall Street, then you have education, media, military, and big pharma. They control the economy, big corporation. But underneath this whole thing is a global plumbing system. Gold, silver, Bitcoin are not part of this system.
Gold and silver being God's money, but Bitcoin being the people's money.
Yes.
And so one of the biggest arguments I hear about Bitcoin is, won't the government just ban it? Right?
Yeah.
So let's think about this, right? Bitcoin, and they say the government will never adopt it. No, the government won't. It's the people's money. But to that point, right? So Bitcoin, or PayPal announced they're going to support Bitcoin. And it's kind of a trap. You can't really get it off the system. You can't really use it. But it exposes about 350 million people to Bitcoin. So they'll start to use it and go, wait a minute, I can't get off the system. I'll move over here. Within the next year, I would imagine we'll have over 1 billion people using Bitcoin. So to everybody's point that says, won't the government ban it? When there's 1 billion people using Bitcoin, the governments aren't going to have much of a choice.
I think that's where gold and Bitcoin fit into the equation. I just look at them as two completely separate asset classes with two different purposes, right? I think that gold is there as an insurance policy just to protect your purchasing power. So I always say you buy gold not to get rich, but to stay rich. And then Bitcoin is more of a speculation, or you've got some asymmetry there, probably a lot more upside than you have downside. Those are unique assets in that they don't have any counterparty risk. And see, that's very important when you're in the everything bubble. The main thing though is we've got to figure out a way to limit the ability for the central planners to create more currency. That's what it's about. And if you look at the gold guys, the Bitcoin guys, we're all on the same team here.
Right.
And that's limiting the central planners from creating all of those currency units that trickle down and play into the Cantillon
How does
effect.
that happen? How does that happen?
Well, as an example, with Bitcoin, there's only 21 million of them. So if we went onto, let's say, a Bitcoin standard, I'm not saying this is what we're doing.
Right.
I'm just let's go through a thought experiment. Well, that would prevent the Jerome Powell from coming in and taking his balance sheet from 4 trillion to 7 trillion. That would prevent, and not only that, but see, a lot of people on the left say, oh, well, yeah, that's terrible because we can't do these social programs. But what they forget is it would also make it harder for the governments to go to war because they can't print the money. The only way they could go to war is if they actually tax the citizens first. And so if we're not on board with them going to war, we're like, no, I'm not paying for that.
The reason I like gold, silver, and Bitcoin, it's outside the system. It's out of reach of the US government and the US Treasury and things like this. So I love this stuff. I just simply do not trust my government. If you do, save money, save dollars, and have a good life.
Please subscribe. Help us reach 400 subs this year. It will be very delightful. And also share the video to spread the word. You can watch another video, just click left or right. Keep inspiring.